Good afternoon. It is 12 o'clock. You're watching Sky News. Keir Starmer's back from COP30 in Brazil and ready to lead PMQs. And it's likely to be a testy one for the Prime Minister. He's on his feet already. Let's listen in.
Generation, a D-Day veteran who entered Bergen-Belsen days after it was liberated. Mervyn is 100 years old. I'm lucky to have met him twice. And I know that it took him many, many years before he felt he could even begin to tell his story. And we thank him for his service and the story that he has told us in respect of it. As we mark Armistice Day, we give our eternal thanks to Mervyn and all those who served, and remember the extraordinary sacrifice of ordinary people who fought to defend our freedom. Mr. Speaker, the House will also want to join me in remembering Holocaust survivor Manfred Goldberg. He showed the most extraordinary courage to share his testimony, and in his memory, we must ensure that never again means never again. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the news that SSE have announced that they will spend £33 billion on clean energy projects in this country. That's a major vote of confidence in the UK economy, happening because of our decisions to embrace the opportunities of clean power. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Good job. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate myself with the Prime Minister's remarks about remembrance? I particularly remember in 1997 in West Africa, where I somehow managed to survive a bloody and violent attempted coup. So if the Prime Minister wants any ideas about how to do that, he only has to ask. The Prime Minister's questions last week was, Mr. Speaker, an absolute bin fire. So if the Prime Minister is indeed intent on promoting the United Kingdom on the world stage, please can he promise the House that he will never, ever, ever be away on a Wednesday ever again?
Well, it's always great to hear from the successor for Kwasi Kwarteng's constituency, Mr. Speaker. I'm very proud to represent our country on the world stage last week in COP, before that in NATO, and it's because of the reputation we've rebuilt over the last 15, 16 months that other countries now want to do trade deals with us and want to place their orders with us.
Sally James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I also associate myself with the remarks from the Prime Minister? The Prime Minister will be aware of the campaign run by the trustees of the British Coal Staff Superannuation Scheme, which is campaigning to return the £2.3 billion investment reserve back to its members, 700 of which are in Doncaster Central. The Labour government delivered on its manifesto pledge for the MPS scheme last year, so will the Prime Minister also ensure that fairness and justice is delivered to the BCSSS members at the upcoming budget, and will he meet with me and other Coalfield MPs to discuss further?
Well, I know how committed she is to righting historic wrongs for our mining communities, and I can assure her so am I. She will know we've already transferred £1.5 billion that was wrongly kept from over 100,000 former mine workers. Ministers, as she knows, have met the BCSSS trustees on several occasions. The Industry Minister is meeting them later on today, and I'll make sure that she's updated in relation to that.
Can we made not the Leader of the Opposition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I associate my party with the Prime Minister's comments about Remembrance Week, and also his comments on Manfred Goldberg and Mervyn Kirsch, who is in the gallery today? Mr. Speaker, this morning on the BBC, the Health Secretary said there is a toxic culture in Downing Street that needs to change. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, my focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. But let me be absolutely clear, any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable. On the Health Secretary, Mr. Speaker, in relation to Health Secretary, he promised before the election that in the first year of a Labour government we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments. We didn't deliver 2 million, or 3 or 4. We delivered 5 million extra appointments. And today the Health Secretary is in Manchester, where he's announcing that because because of the action he's taken to abolish NHS England, he's putting more people on the front line. He's doing a great job, as is the whole of my cabinet.
Mr. Speaker, what we heard the Health Secretary say this morning was that he wants to cut waiting lists, but we all know that there's only one waiting list that he really wants to cut. But the Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs. Mr. Speaker, she asks about waiting lists. Waiting lists are down under this government. The number of GPs is up. And because we scrapped NHS England, we're investing on the front line. That's what the Health Secretary is doing today, getting on with his job, and he's doing a very good job too.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear him give full confidence to Morgan McSweeney, but the truth is he says these attacks aren't authorised. That means he's lost control of Number 10, because that's where they're coming from. But the real scandal, Mr. Speaker, the real scandal is that 2 weeks from a budget, the government has descended into civil war. Instead of fixing the mess they've made of the economy, they're all... Mr. Speaker, they're all chuntering. These are the feral MPs that Number 10 has been talking about. They're not my words. They're Number 10's words, his words. But unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
Mr. Speaker, this is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth of the G7. 5 interest rate cuts. Trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose, we've delivered. And I can update the House.
If people want to audition for a pantomime, I suggest you go to the Old Vic.
Pantomime. Mr. Speaker, I can update the House. The Bank of England has upgraded growth today. We've secured £230 billion of private investment. And just this morning, I thought she might welcome it, the SSE have announced £33 billion of investment in clean power. That's what this team are delivering for the country, fixing the mess that they left.
Mr. Speaker, he's talking about growth and investment while the Prime Minister desperately tries to cling on to his own job. Perhaps he understands what it's like for all those people out there losing their jobs. How can he talk about growth? Yesterday, we learned that unemployment has risen to the same rate as it was in lockdown. 180,000 jobs lost, Mr. Speaker. Why does the Prime Minister think that unemployment has risen every single month since Labour took office?
Mr. Speaker, let me give the House the details. 329,000 people more are in work since the start of this year. So 329,000 more are in work. Of course, I accept we need to do more in relation to unemployment. That's why we're transforming job centres, which they opposed. That's why we're working with 60 major businesses to tackle ill health in the workplace and invested £3.8 billion in tailored back-to-work support, which they opposed. I would also remind the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker, that the average unemployment in the 14 years of her government was 5.4%, higher than the rate today.
Mr. Speaker, we left employment higher than it was after the last Labour government. Let me tell him now, what is causing it is his disastrous budget last year. That is what has caused the increase in unemployment. And so, to be clear, for all those Labour MPs shaking their heads, it's last year's tax rises that have killed jobs, and that's what's going to trigger this year's tax rises. This is the tax doom loop, and there is only one way out of it, and that is to cut spending. So why is the Prime Minister instead offering welfare giveaways to save his own skin.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll tell the opposition why we increased national insurance is because of the mess that they left the country in. The NHS on its knees. Now we've got 5 million extra appointments, waiting lists down, and 2,500 more GPs as a result of our decisions. But it's nearly the one-year anniversary, but she still hasn't told us in relation to national insurance whether she agrees and admits that we should do it, or if not, if that's her position, how she would find the money that we raised in the budget. She's had a whole year to think about that question. Perhaps now she can give us an answer.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't have made the stupid mistake in the first place of putting up the jobs tax and killing jobs. Since they came in, it's been disaster after disaster. The Deputy Prime Minister, the new Deputy Prime Minister, is clueless about how many illegal migrant sex offenders he's let loose. The Culture Secretary breaking the rules to give her donor a top job. Taxes set to rise even further. Unemployment at levels not seen since lockdown. And in the middle of it, a weak Prime Minister at war with his own cabinet. Mr. Speaker, it's not just him, it is all of them. There is no replacement, it is all of them. 2 weeks before the budget, isn't it the case that this Prime Minister has lost control of his government, he's lost the confidence of his party, and lost the trust of the British people?
Mr. Speaker, the stupid mistakes were made over 14 long years. They broke the economy, and now they think that they can lecture us. And now they've got this unserious idea that they can find £47 billion of cuts without saying where they're going to come from. No wonder that's called flimsy. Meanwhile, we're rebuilding the country. Wages up, investment up, mortgages down.
Order. Mr. Phil. You were meant to be a senior person on this front bench. You're meant to set an example. It's certainly a bad one today. Sir Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, despite extra government funding, adult social care services in my community are in disarray. My constituents are also facing a new fire risk because we don't have a fully functioning fire authority. This has all been caused by the dysfunction at Kent County Council because so many reform councillors have been suspended for bad behaviour. So does the Prime Minister share my concern that reform chaos is a risk to public safety?
My sympathy is with the people of Kent whose lives are being disrupted by the staggering incompetence of reform. Mr. Speaker, Kent County Council was supposed to be the blueprint for what reform would deliver across the country. Now we can see what that means. Cutting local services, raising council tax, failing to protect the public. That's all reform have to offer. Grievance, division and total incompetence.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I associate myself with the earlier remarks of the Prime Minister and say what a great honour it was to join the royal family at the Cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday to pay our respects to all those heroes who gave their lives for our country. We must never forget the sacrifice they made for our freedoms. Mr. Speaker, a great British institution is under attack from a foreign government. President Trump is trying to destroy our BBC, not because he cares about the truth, but because he doesn't want to get away with his lies. Trump has undermined press freedom in America. Now he's trying to do the same here, disgracefully egged on by the leader of reform. So will the Prime Minister tell President Trump to drop his demand for $1 billion settlement from the BBC? And will he guarantee that President Trump will not get a single penny from British licence fee payers?
Let me be clear, I believe in a strong and independent BBC. Some would rather the BBC didn't exist. Some of them are sitting up there. I'm not one of them. In an age of disinformation, the argument for impartial British news service is stronger than ever. And where mistakes are made, they do need to get their house in order, and the BBC must uphold the highest standards, be accountable and correct errors quickly. But I will always stand up for a strong, independent BBC.
David.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is right that the BBC's independence and impartiality are absolutely crucial. That's why we must stop President Trump from undermining them. But President Trump's not the only one, Mr. Speaker. The last government spent years undermining the BBC's independence and impartiality. They put 2 Conservative cronies on the BBC board. One has had to resign, the other's still there, but he's been repeatedly accused of interfering in editorial decisions and staff appointments. Robbie Gibbs should have no role in appointing the next Director General. And given the Royal Charter gives the government the power to remove him, will the Prime Minister sack him now?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I certainly agree with the comment that the last government undermined the work of the BBC. They undermined pretty well everything they did in 14 years. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to go into the individual runnings of the BBC. I'm a strong supporter of the BBC in the terms I've already set out.
Durham Puffy.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is Care Leavers Month, when we remember the resilience and the brilliance of our young people who have grown up in care. And I was delighted to welcome a group of Southampton's care leavers to share their views with the Minister recently. But while this Labour government is taking real action to support care leavers, a Reform councillor has disgracefully described children in care as downright evil. Will the Prime Minister... He said it. Will the Prime Minister, and I hope the whole House, join me in condemning Reform's vile rhetoric, and will he reassure us that this Labour government will continue to support the protections and opportunities for all our care leavers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, November marks the first ever Care Leavers Month, and that is a time to recognise that every child deserves support to achieve their potential. And through our landmark Children's Wellbeing Bill, we're requiring every local authority to help care leavers find secure accommodation. It saddens me that the parties opposite voted against it. The comments about children in care being evil are utterly appalling. And now the member for Clacton has heard them. I'm sure he'll want to condemn them right now.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I've only got 30 seconds. The Prime Minister has stated very clearly that he wants to close the migrant hotels by the end of this Parliament. Well, the Reform-led West Northamptonshire Council, brilliantly led council, will be issuing foreclosure notices on 3 migrant hotels within the next few days in response to grave public concern about the safety of women and girls on the streets of West Northamptonshire. Would the Prime Minister approve of us speeding up the closure of the migrant hotels?
Mr. Speaker, we will grit the mesh we inherited and close every hotel. At their peak, under the previous government, there were 400 hotels. Now there are only 200 remaining. But he says he doesn't have time to condemn the comments calling children in care evil. He's also not had the time, it appears, to condemn the racist comments of his own MP. Utterly spineless.
Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week I visited the new diagnostic centre at Withington Community Hospital, and as well as the 85,000 new appointments it's going to create, I was really pleased to see the new solar panels and heat pumps being designed into the building. So in the week of COP, and can I thank the Prime Minister for his climate leadership and attending COP, in the week of COP, what more can we do to ensure that new public buildings have green energy designed into them?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was very proud to attend COP last week, and the UK is leading on tackling climate change, delivering energy security and getting bills down and generating hundreds of jobs across the country. We're investing over £250 million to put rooftop solar on schools, hospital and military sites across the country, and that will deliver £400 million of savings to renew our public services.
Angus MacDonald.
Prime Minister, successive governments impose massive environmental tariffs on customers using UK-produced renewable electricity, but far less on imported carbon fuel mains gas. This is the main reason why those not on the gas grid, i.e. those living in rural Britain, pay a great deal more to heat their properties. Yes, renewable projects are important, but the huge environmental tariffs on our electricity bills are not fair. Would the Prime Minister acknowledge this injustice and commit his government to addressing this? Thank you.
Can I absolutely recognise the need to address the imbalance between electricity and gas prices? We are exploring options to create a fairer system, and I'm happy for ministers to keep him updated on what we're looking at. It's thanks to those levies and Labour's expansion of the warm homes discount that 6 million families will be getting £150 off their energy bills this winter. And I know that he will welcome the £33 billion in investment from SSE, helping connect clean energy to areas across Scotland where it's most needed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prior to the general election, the Health Secretary visited Amber Valley and declared it an NHS dentistry desert. Since then, I've secured £240,000 of additional funding, encouraged my constituents to access the 16,300 emergency appointments in Derbyshire, and last week secured thousands of extra UDAs. But there is more to do. So can the Prime Minister update me on the progress of the contract negotiations with the BDA and the timescale that the department is working to?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm appalled that we inherited such a situation where tooth decay is the most common reason where children between 5 and 9 are admitted to hospital. Every children's hospital under their watch, going in 5 to 9. I was very shocked when I heard this the first time at Alderhay Hospital up in the northwest, that more children being admitted to have their teeth taken out because they're rotting between the ages of 5 to 9 than any other operation. That was their record. They should just be ashamed of it. Ashamed of it. It's why I'm determined to rebuild NHS dentistry. I can confirm that discussions are underway with the sector, including the British Dental Association, on fundamental reform to the dental contract to get her constituents the care that they need and that they deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Jehoot's pharmacy has been responsible for repeated closures, leaving staff unpaid and residents without access to vital medicine. Unfit pharmacy owners like Sarjit Jehooti, who has severely neglected patients and staff in West Dorset and across England, should not be running our care system. Will the Prime Minister make time in the parliamentary schedule for emergency legislation to give the government and the regulators powers to pay staff, tackle improper pharmacy owners and directors, and make sure scandals like this can never happen again?
Can I thank him for raising this really serious issue, which has been raised by others across these benches on previous occasions, and it is a very serious issue. It is simply not right that customers and staff have been so badly let down. The Care Minister has convened representatives from across the industry to resolve the situation as quickly as possible, and I want to reassure him that we're working speedily to consider how to strengthen regulation of these pharmacies, and I'll update the House as soon as I can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the assisted dying debates, I and many others highlighted the importance of palliative care provided by hospices, but this vital work has been left reliant on donations and charity for far too long, and Garden House Hospice in Letchworth is now facing a serious funding gap. I welcome government investment in hospices, but will the Prime Minister consider broader reform to put hospice funding on a sustainable footing? And can he ensure ministers meet with me to explore every option to keep Garden House Hospice open?
I'm pleased to tell him that £100 million has now been passed to Hospice UK, so places like Garden House in his constituency can create the best environment to deliver care. That's backed, Mr. Speaker, by £26 million investment for children and young people's hospices. We're also investing over £3 million in researching palliative and end-of-life care through the National Institute for Health and Care Research. We're working on further proposals to improve the access, quality and sustainability of care, and I'll make sure that ministers keep him updated.
Rebecca Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Prime Minister for his help. It's been over 6 months since the Supreme Court ruling on the meaning of sex, yet public institutions are still knowingly and intentionally breaching the law. HMP Downview, a women's prison in Banstead, has 5 biological males in it. And if that wasn't bad enough, those males are mixing with the women in the daytime without adequate supervision. Will the Prime Minister ensure biological males are moved out of women's prisons immediately?
The Supreme Court ruling must be implemented in full and at all levels. She's absolutely right about that. She's raised these examples with me. I will make sure they're looked into and make sure she gets a proper reply in relation to the particular examples.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With miles of golden sand and a bucket full of memories, Rhyl has been attracting visitors for generations. After millions of pounds of Welsh Government investment and a £20 million UK Government Neighbourhood Fund, Rhyl is on the up. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that only with two Labour governments working together can we restore pride in our Welsh seaside towns? Join me for a stroll on our new promenade to see just what Rhyl has to offer.
Well, that's a very appealing invitation just at the moment. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be putting power and resources directly back in the hands of local people in communities like Rhyl. That £20 million can be used for issues that matter most to them, include revitalising their high street, a cause that I know is crucial to many residents, including hers. Just 1 in 14 communities across Wales is benefiting from the Pride in Place funding. This is the renewal you get with a Labour government working with a Labour government in Cardiff.
Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maternity services are a vital part of women's healthcare, but sadly too many women are being failed. At Cheltenham General Hospital, the Evita Birth Centre was temporarily closed for labour and births back in 2022. Last week, we learned that there will be no decision about a potential plan for reopening it until spring next year. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that 4 years is far too long to ask local mums-to-be to wait? And can he give me reassurance that a temporary downgrade that was made under the Conservatives will not become permanent under his government?
Can I tell him that our starting point is that we must always make sure that every mother is heard, understood and gets the quality of care that is needed. The Independent National Maternity Investigation and Local Health Needs Assessment are due to report in spring of next year, as he says. It's right that the recommendations of both of them are closely considered in any decision for Cheltenham, and I'll make sure that he's kept updated as that rolls out.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I say that I've long thought that both you and the Prime Minister would suit a magnificent moustache, and I'm sure you'd be capable of growing a better one than this. Many of us men in this House and outside are growing our tash out this month to highlight the need for our health system and men ourselves to address preventable and treatable conditions to which all men are vulnerable, including prostate cancer, testicular cancer and mental health conditions such as depression. Does the Prime Minister agree that the forthcoming first ever men's health strategy, soon to be published, must lead to a major step change in the way our country helps men stay well?
Well, as he knows, my #1 priority is growth, so I'm very glad to see his upper lip. He's obviously championing this himself. And can I send my best wishes to everyone growing a moustache this Movember? It is right, Mr. Speaker, to highlight that men are hit harder by a range of conditions, including cancer, cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. And that's why our men's health strategy will set out actions to improve the health of all men in England.
Rupert Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every week, we hear of a brutal murder, rape or stabbing, far too often perpetrated by someone who should not be in our country to begin with. Does the Prime Minister agree that for cases where the guilt is so undeniable, the crime so monstrous, the evil so irredeemable, the reintroduction of the death penalty for both foreign and domestic criminals should be put to the British people in a legally binding referendum?
Can I first say that any attack is to be condemned, and it is absolutely right, and we're determined that there is a criminal justice response in relation to attack, however it's carried out and whoever it's carried out by. But reintroducing the death penalty is not the answer to this. It didn't work when it was in place. It led to the death of those that, in fact, turned out were innocent. But what we must do is improve, as we are, the criminal justice response in this country.
Kevin Bonavia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to pay tribute to a new veterans group in Stevenage called the Muster Point, founded by Stuart Mendelsohn and Steve Black. Last week, I joined them at a continuous 72-hour vigil at Stevenage War Memorial, where veterans shared stories of family and friends lost in war. But veterans deserve more than just our tributes. So will the Prime Minister commit to working with veterans in Stevenage and across the UK in delivering this government's new veteran strategy in full?
One of the greatest honours in this role is meeting and thanking our armed forces for their service, which obviously we've been able to do during the course of this weekend and this week. Our ambition is to bring the Armed Forces Covenant fully into law in the next Armed Forces Bill, and we will do so. We're also renewing the contract with those who serve through our veterans strategy, including Homes for Heroes, a new network of support centres connecting charities and services with veterans. And Labour patriots stand with all those who serve and have served our country.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on that point, with the upcoming vote on the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, 9 of the most respected and experienced generals of a generation have publicly attacked the government's approach on lawfare against our armed forces. They have said it will erode trust in the justice system and it is a threat to national security. As a veteran who served in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, does the Prime Minister think they're all wrong? And when is he actually going to start standing up for our veterans?
Can I begin by thanking him for his service to our country? And when former service chiefs raise an issue, we will, of course, engage with them. Of course, I respect their service and their views, and will do so. We are having to get rid of unlawful legislation and putting in place a system with clear rights and protections for veterans, and we'll continue to try to get that balance right.
Anderson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. 4 years ago, I brought in a private member's bill to ban the sale of wet wipes with plastic in. The last government dragged its feet. These wet wipes cause fatbergs in our sewers and millions of pounds on our water bills for all of our constituents and pollute rivers and seas. This government promised to bring in this ban and is doing so now. Will the Prime Minister join with me on celebrating a Labour promise delivered and share the message that we should always bin wet wipes and other wipes, not flush them?
Well, can I commend her? She's been a long-standing campaigner on this important issue, and the public is right to be furious about how the last government allowed sewage to pour into our lakes, rivers and seas. Alongside tough new powers to combat pollution, this ban will put an end to plastic wet wipes that litter our beaches, clog up our sewers and harm wildlife.
David Chadwick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lloyds Bank have over 31,000 customers in my constituency, and yet many of those customers, particularly the elderly and the vulnerable, are struggling to get out their own cash. That's because Lloyds have closed their branches in Brecon, in Prestine, in Ustragunlice, and before the end of this month, in Pontedower. That's despite making billions in profits and paying their CEO £5 million. Will the Prime Minister write to Lloyds Bank and ask them to keep that last branch in Pontedower open?
Well, I'm grateful to him for raising that, and I'll look at the particular example that he's raised. As he will know, we're rolling out hubs, some of them already in place and more to come, and I'll happily update him on where they're likely to be.
Final question, Richard Quigley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following the work of our APPG for eating disorders, I was horrified to hear that 19-year-old Lily Cliff, who suffers from anorexia, has been placed on an end-of-life care pathway after Rotherham, Doncaster and South Humber NHS Foundation Trust obtained a Court of Protection ruling to withdraw her treatment. This decision directly contradicts NICE guidelines and the Minister for Care's own statement in September that eating disorders are not a terminal illness. Will the Prime Minister urgently review this case to ensure that Lily and her family receive the support they need and that Lily is given every possible chance to recover and live, and remind all ICBs, NHS and hospitals that suffering from an eating disorder is not a terminal illness?
Well, first, my thoughts are with Lily and her family, and the details he raises are really deeply concerning. I know he's raised this with health ministers, and I'll make sure he gets a swift response. He is a powerful advocate for change, and I share his determination that everyone with an eating disorder gets the care and the support that they need.
Let the front benches change over.
Well, that was the end of Prime Minister's questions. Started nice and punctually and finished relatively punctually as well. Let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby, who joins me now. Beth, so Kemi Badenoch went in hard on what's been going on at Number 10 and the rumours surrounding Keir Starmer and plotters today. It's been a difficult morning for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, let's start a bit with the atmospherics there, because the Prime Minister went in there with an in-tray full of trouble. And in terms of the performance in the Commons there, Kemi Badenoch had plenty of ammo to fire at him over this war of words between sources in Number 10 and now his Health Secretary that have spilled into the open. And she deployed that to great effect, with the Prime Minister looking pretty uncomfortable. And I imagine he was there punctually, and he was glad that it ended when it ended. And you could feel that and see it in the chamber with the Conservative benches with their tails up like I haven't seen in a long time. Kemi Badenoch actually laughing at the Prime Minister, laughing at the Labour benches and talking about this toxic culture within Number 10. And there's a big substantial question here which she threw at the Prime Minister, which is, what is he going to do about it? I think we've got a clip where we can hear the exchange and then we can unpack it a bit.
The Health Secretary said there is a toxic culture in Downing Street that needs to change. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, my focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. But let me be absolutely clear, any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable. On the Health Secretary, Mr. Speaker, in relation to Health Secretary, he promised before the election that in the first year of a Labour government we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments. We didn't deliver 2 million, or 3 or 4. We delivered 5 million extra appointments.
So, Beth.
Well, look, there's a few things going on here. We haven't got the clip, but I'll come on to it because he's then asked about his Chief of Staff. The first thing to say is that the Prime Minister there is giving clear back into Wes Streeting. And I said before Prime Minister's questions that is what we would see today. The Prime Minister back in his Health Secretary, and his Health Secretary this morning professing his loyalty to the Prime Minister amid rumours about this plot that Wes Streeting...
We've got both of them.
We've got both
but
of them.
let's
okay.
listen to the exchange between the Health Secretary and Sophie earlier on Rebecca's programme.
Okay.
These sorts of Westminster bubble process stories, boys getting carried away, these are things that distract from our ability to get across the message of the change we're making, the difference we're making on things that voters actually care about.
There's a few specific allegations about you that have been put out in the last 24 hours. I want to put them to you directly. Firstly, there's the Times. Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked.
So pretty robust.
Well, that's kind of typical Wes Streeting delivery there. But look, the point of all of this, and it's helpful that we played that because it kind of explains the story, is that what's been going on in the past 24 hours is there is growing concern in government that there might be a plot against the Prime Minister. It's been swirling for a while. I mean, we saw a bit of noise around it at party conference. And my understanding has been that any moves would be coming if they come after the local elections in May and the Welsh Parliament elections and the Holyrood elections, where Labour could get an absolute drubbing. So this is not imagined. This is active talk about whether or not Keir Starmer is the right Prime Minister to lead Labour into the next general election. That is going on amongst the party. I think what's happened in recent days is that with the budget changes, with the announcements of tax rises, there is a febrile feeling in the party. I think some allies of the Prime Minister have tried to get ahead of that. They have warned that the Prime Minister would fight any leadership challenge, in an attempt just to calm down the noise. But what's been hooked onto that in some of the briefings that have happened in the past 24 hours is the name of Wes Streeting, which is discussed, you know, in the parlours around Westminster, being put in the open. And there's been some active briefing about people around Number 10 against Wes Streeting. And now it has completely blown up. You've got the Health Secretary going on the rounds this morning saying, I'm loyal, I'm not plotting against the Prime Minister, but then importantly pointing the finger at people in Number 10, saying this is not acceptable behaviour. And now you've got the Prime Minister having to come out today and back Wes Streeting and also insist that he is not behind the briefings. And this is where it gets a bit more complicated.
So this is, I mean, Wes Streeting pointing the finger at Number 10, but Kemi Badenoch being more specific and saying, is it Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's advisor? So we've got that.
Yeah, let's listen to
that clip
next.
Mr. Speaker, what we heard the Health Secretary say this morning was that he wants to cut waiting lists, but we all know that there's only one waiting list that he really wants to cut. But the Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on Cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their jobs. Mr. Speaker, she asks about waiting lists. Waiting lists are down under this government. The number of GPs is up. Because we've scrapped NHS England, we're investing on the front line. That's what the Health Secretary is doing today, getting on with his job, and he's doing a very good job too.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't hear him give full confidence to Morgan McSweeney.
Yeah, fully focused isn't quite the same as saying he has my full confidence.
Let's unpack that a bit, just to explain what's going on there. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is attacking a toxic culture. The Prime Minister is clearly very uncomfortable about this. He's doing a couple of things there. The first thing is he's publicly saying, I have never authorised briefings against Cabinet members. He's actually doing that to talk to his backbenchers who are furious about these briefings, the toxicity and the infight, and they don't like it. So I think there's one thing there where the Prime Minister is saying, this is not authorised by me, and that's a message to the party. But then what follows on is what Kemi Badenoch very astutely talks about there, which is the culture in Number 10 is led by the Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Do you have full confidence in the Prime Minister? And if you are sort of sharp-eared, what you would have heard then, what she picked up, is the Prime Minister doesn't give full confidence in McSweeney in that moment. He says he's focused on delivery. Now, I can... Actually, this is literally just landing in my laptop right now, because I've then followed that up and saying, does the Prime Minister have full confidence in McSweeney? Because at times Keir Starmer has been asked this question, not in the moment said, I have full confidence in X, and then is asked to follow it up. In the briefing after with the Prime Minister's team, does he have confidence in Morgan is the question. The answer was yes. So it looks like they are now trying to say they do have confidence in Morgan McSweeney. But there is a question here about how the Prime Minister deals with this, because Wes Streeting has quite clearly said that if these briefings are happening against him, they should be the person and people responsible need to be ousted from Number 10. So now the Prime Minister is under pressure because his party might feel like, well, if you're not authorising the briefings and you're not going to do anything about it, are you in control of your operation? So actually, what began, I think, as an attempt to try and shore up the Prime Minister by saying, pipe down, everyone, he ain't going anywhere, he's only been in here for 18 months, he will fight any sort of challenge, has now turned into a bigger problem for Keir Starmer because it has blown up. And now it's quite hard to put the genie back in the bottle. So there we go, 2 weeks out from the budget.
Well done. That's Beth's essay for the day.
God.
It's a really good point to bring in our panel for the afternoon. We've got the Labour MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge, Dr Marie Tidball, the Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight East, Jo Robertson, and also SNP's MP for Aberdeen North, Kirsty Blackman. Good to see you all. Well, Marie, let's go to you first of all. Has the Prime Minister lost control of number 10?
Absolutely not. We heard from Wes today that the rumours were categorically untrue and extremely unhelpful. The Prime Minister is laser focused on delivery. I was sat with my constituent Claire Throssell in number 10 2 weeks ago with him promising to deliver on her campaign over the last 10 years to repeal the presumption of contact. I was sat just over a week ago in the chamber, in fact stood making a speech on the Prime Minister's promise to deliver Hillsborough Law, something that affects my constituents, being only half a mile away from my constituency. A Prime Minister who has ensured we've overseen delivery on 2/3 of our manifesto commitments, either to completion or with considerable work being done. 5 million more NHS appointments in the first year and a bit, and that was 3 million more than the 2 million we had in our manifesto. So delivery, delivery, delivery. I've seen the results of what the Prime Minister has done, certainly working with my constituents, and that's been emphatically important. And, you know, I'm out on the doorstep, I'm out in my constituency week in, week out, and this is Westminster noise. And they want a Prime Minister who is laser focused on fighting to turn this country around after the instability we saw under 14 years of the Conservatives. You know, 4 Prime Ministers in 5 years is not a good record. I will continue to focus on what I can do for my constituents and what our government can do for this country.
But isn't that the problem? You mentioned the Conservatives, and that's what a lot of commentators are saying, that 18 months into an election, the fact that you appear to have this kind of infighting, it has echoes of conservatism. It has echoes of a party where we might potentially have a new leader mid-election.
I think a lot of this, for most people out there, is tedious speculation. That's certainly what it is for me. I, week in, week out, look at what I can do to help the lives of my constituents. Our government is already delivering on that. I've got the first breakfast club that's just opened in my constituency. I know that there are thousands of children across my constituency that are benefiting from the free school meals we've enabled by extending the offer to all universal credit receiving families, and we are doing a huge amount of work to tackle the cost to families of things like childcare, saving £7,500 a year for families, school uniform caps. Getting to grips with the cost of living crisis facing hard-working British families up and down this country is one of the mainstays of our government, and we are delivering on that time and time again.
Jo Robertson for the Conservatives, let's bring you in here now. So Marie says this is nothing but tedious speculation.
I think what's very tedious and worse than tedious, very worrying for most British people is the state of the government as it is at the moment. So Keir Starmer lost control of his backbenchers back in the summer when they vetoed his welfare plans. He's now lost control of number 10. And he effectively admitted it at Prime Minister's questions. You heard him just there saying that he authorised none of these briefings, but they are happening. That, by definition, is the man at the top losing control of his operation in the heart of number 10. And you've got a health secretary who is describing that environment around the Prime Minister as toxic. This is a government that is now fighting for its survival 2 weeks out from a budget. Most British people are seriously, seriously worried about their financial well-being, and they're watching a government turning in on itself.
Kirsty, when you're looking ahead to those Holyrood elections in May, you must be putting the bunting out at this behaviour.
I mean, well, not exactly, right? You know, I want Scottish independence. I've been fighting for Scottish independence. I don't want people to have to go through the kind of chaos that we're seeing in order for us to get to independence. I don't want people to have to continue to struggle day after day, unable to pay their electricity bills that Keir Starmer promised would come down by £300 and have gone up by £180. Actually, that's the stuff that's worrying people. They're not worried about, you know, the chaos in Westminster. What they're worried about is the fact that there is chaos in Westminster while people should be focused on bringing down the cost of living, and they're not seeing that. They're not seeing those changes being made. I absolutely want us to win the Holyrood election. I'll be delighted when we do win the Holyrood election. However, I don't want us to go through a situation where people are being made poorer in the next 12 months, in the last 18 months, in the last 14 years for us to get to that point.
Marie, it's a good point, isn't it? You know, we are just 2 weeks out from the budget. This is not a great backdrop. It appears to be a party in some kind of chaos. At the same time, we've got Rachel Reeves in 2 weeks. All the rumours seem to be that she's going to expect the population to swallow a pretty bitter pill in terms of how much more we potentially are going to have to pay in tax.
I mean, my experience as someone in that Labour government as a backbencher is that very much one of people working together week in, week out. I meet with ministers about issues in my constituency and the ability of our government to deliver, whether that's on steel in my patch, which has been hugely important, whether that's on issues around domestic violence and abuse, which I've mentioned already, whether that's on enormous, significant changes to how we deal with public bodies and their candour under Hillsborough law. We are doing those things because we have a capable and talented cabinet and ministerial team working together, working across departments. And we've got the budget coming up, but the backdrop to that is a choice. Do we want 14 years of austerity that we saw, or renewal? And very much Rachel Reeves has set out that renewal and set out our focus on cost of living, NHS.
This is a mess, isn't it? It's a mess.
I want to continually and always focus on what my constituents need. And what my constituents need is a government that delivers. I can name a number of things in my constituency, whether that's flood alleviation schemes, whether that's money for new roofs on schools, whether that's new nurseries opening up attached to primary schools, that we are already delivering on my doorstep across the entirety of my constituency. That is the sign of a government working and a government understanding that it is here in the service of British people. We didn't see that under the Conservatives.
But the issue is your constituents aren't hearing that, because what we're actually getting is infighting between Number 10 and the Health Secretary, anonymous briefings blowing up and forcing a Prime Minister to have to come to the Commons to try and defend his Health Secretary, signal to his party that he is not authorising briefings against his old cabinet, and you're meant to be the change government. I mean, it's a mess. It must be frustrating for you.
Look, this is what PMQs is for. It's about holding the Prime Minister to account. And what we've heard today, both from Wes and from the Prime Minister, is the strong relationship that they have, the working relationship they have, which has delivered us 5 million more
but not
NHS
the strong relationship
appointments.
between the Prime Minister and Number 10. That has broken down because the Prime Minister had to come out today and say he isn't authorising those briefings. But they're happening. So he's lost control of Number 10 and he's having to try and demonstrate that he's got a relationship with Wes Streeting, who wants to replace him.
I agree that he's also lost that kind of relationship with his MPs as well. If you ask some of the Labour backbenchers, especially some of the new ones, some of them haven't even ever had a conversation with Keir Starmer. How can they be working as a team if they're not actually having conversation? I mean, Marie's obviously got a level of access to some of the ministers, which is great, and I'm glad she's able to fight on behalf of her constituents. But the Labour Party are not working as a team. They are currently all fighting with each other, and they are absolutely not delivering the change that was promised to people. People voted for them so that they could actually afford their energy bills at the end of the month.
And Marie, isn't that part of the problem that you know, you've listed a lot of the things that have worked for your constituents and in your area, which is obviously great for them, but fundamentally one of the main promises the Labour Party made was that they weren't going to put up taxes, and it looks like in 2 weeks' time that potentially may happen. And you know, that is a betrayal of the voters' trust, is it not?
So I'm not going to preempt what Rachel's going to do in the budget. That would be wrong for me to do so. I know that she has set out the clear choice, that the choice will be around renewal, that at the heart of that will be ensuring that the NHS is a priority, as is tackling the cost of living. I just want to come back on some of the points that Kirsty made. We had the Prime Minister at PLP just over a week ago. We have many opportunities to engage with the Prime Minister, with ministers. I know colleagues are working really, really hard to keep those channels of conversation sustained and going. And I see evidence of that week in, week out as a backbencher and relatively new MP.
I mean, I was told after that PLP that actually the Parliamentary Labour Party were really annoyed because the Chancellor was doing a speech the next morning signalling that she might raise taxes, and he did neither talk to his PLP about it or alert them to the fact that there was going to be a speech that morning. So even when he turns up to communicate, there is a communication. Did you pick up on that?
So I was in the chamber for the Hillsborough law because that was something that I'm passionate about and I wanted to speak on. But I know that I think it took, well into around 28, 30 questions in that session. That is a Prime Minister that wants to listen to his backbenchers, and that will have been a range of questions. That isn't what I pick up. There will always be people that want to put a negative spin and a negative commentary on things. But the atmosphere that I picked up via colleagues, because I wasn't in the room, was a sense of being able to ask the things that they wanted to ask, many of which were constituency-based issues, many of which were campaign issues linked to their concerns around the budget. And they had that opportunity in that space. And I think there is a clear sense of visibility and accessibility of the Prime Minister and the whole ministerial and cabinet.
If Number 10 and the Prime Minister were listening, they would never have got into the mess over the universal credit and PIP changes that happened. I mean, just absolutely right on that. The MPs were telling them, the whips were telling them, everybody was telling them, you are not going to be able to get this bill passed. And I don't know what kind of splendid isolation the Prime Minister has built around himself, or Morgan McSweeney has built around the Prime Minister, but they just believed that MPs would fall into line. And they didn't. And if they'd listened, if there had been that communication, right, but the impact of this is that people out there, their lives are getting worse. They're not getting any better. And we're having Wes Streeting, having to go on television this morning and defend his position and defend the Prime Minister. And actually, this whole thing could have been avoided. They should actually be focusing on that mission of growth. They should actually be focusing on getting child poverty down rather than kneecapping one another on telly.
Joe, the Conservatives, loving this in one sense, that it's taking attention away from, your own internal struggles. Normally, after Prime Minister's questions, we talk about what Kemi Badenoch didn't ask about and who's plotting against her in the backbenchers. But today, attention's focused elsewhere.
There are no internal struggles in the Conservative Party today, and there is no plotting against Kemi Badenoch. She's absolutely on the front foot and has been on the front foot for some time now. She's hugely grown into the role, and we've just seen an excellent performance. But no, I'm not revelling in the fact that our government is failing to deliver for the British people, and I'm not revelling in the fact that our government is plainly preparing tax rises in just a couple of weeks' time in breach of their own manifesto. Let's just remember as well, this whole conversation's taking place just 18 months, less than 18 months, after this government won a Tony Blair-style landslide. And within 18 months, it's in meltdown because the Prime Minister has lost control of his party, he's lost control of the operation at Number 10, and he isn't going to get that back. And all the while, people are paying more and more in tax, getting worse returns for public services, and the country is getting poorer. That's the tragedy.
OK, we are going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Dr Marie Tidball for the Labour Party, thank you for coming on and having all the stones thrown at you today. Joe Robertson for the Conservatives and also Kirsty Blackman for the SNP. Good to have you all on today. Thank you very much. And, of course, our political editor, Beth Rigby, alongside me as well.